Paula Page was former principal harpist of the Houston Symphony from 1984 to 2014 and former associate professor of harp at University of Houston and is currently associate professor of harp at Rice University.
I was in the Houston Symphony as principal harpist for 30 years. And since 1986, I have been the associate professor of harp at Rice University. I'm no longer teaching at the University of Houston. I retired from there probably, I don't know, might be 10 years ago. So I'm no longer on the faculty at the University of Houston, though I do teach in the summer at the Texas Music Festival, which is on the campus of the University of Houston. In terms of how I got started with the harp, I do come from a musical family. My family are all singers. I began with piano when I was 8 years old and always did a lot of singing because that's just something that happened in my home. And as a matter of fact, when I was a senior in high school, I applied to be a voice major in college because that was something that I was very familiar with. But the year before, when I was a junior in high school, I had begun harp lessons. I went to a public high school in Philadelphia. It was a college prep public school for girls, and it was called the Philadelphia High School for Girls. It's still in existence today. And excuse me, at the school, there was a harp and they offered free harp lessons. And one day we had an assembly for the whole school where the orchestra played and all the instruments were introduced. And a young lady did a beautiful glissando on the harp, and the orchestra director said, we're fortunate that we have this harp in our school and we offer free harp lessons. And I thought it was so beautiful the way it sounded. And I was curious about what orchestral instruments were like because I didn't know anything about them. So I went home and told my parents I'd like to study the harp at high school, and they said, fine. And then, as I said, when I was a senior, I applied to be a voice major. And was trying to decide whether I would continue the harp, maybe as a minor or just for the enjoyment of it in college. And at around that time, I was introduced to Edna Phillips, who had been the first female principal player in America. And she was retired from the Philadelphia Orchestra, but she had been the very first female principal in any orchestra. And I began lessons with her, and I found her so inspirational that I thought to myself, I really think I'd rather play the harp than be a singer. And so I changed my whole approach, and Miss Phillips was the person who sent me to Alice Shalafu, who was my teacher at the Cleveland Institute of Music. And that took care of everything. She was my teacher, and a magnificent teacher. And so I have always been grateful to Miss Phillips for her advice. And that's how I got to be a harpist.
What are some things you do to ease your nerves before a big performance?
I think the thing that matters the most to me, in terms of being, preparing for a concert that's challenging. The most important thing for me is that to know that I have practiced thoroughly and way in advance. I find that if I know that I'm well prepared, that I have done everything I can to really prepare myself for the concert in terms of knowing the music thoroughly, that boosts my confidence. And when my confidence is boosted that way, then I feel I'm ready. I learned a long time ago when I was in college, I learned about how important it was to focus and concentrate on what I was playing and to not allow extraneous thoughts to come into my mind, that I just focused on the music and what I was playing. And that also did a lot to help with my nerves. I was just totally in the moment of performing. And then on the day of a concert, I'm really careful to try to make sure that I've gotten enough rest, and I'm very careful about what I eat and drink. So I make sure I eat healthy food that day. I eat good carbs, and I drink a lot of water. And I feel like that kind of calms my stomach, and so that I'm not concerned about having any stomach upset or anything like that when I go into a big concert. One other thing that I think is helpful is, let's say I'm sitting in the orchestra and I have a big cadenza coming up, and it's going to be a solo harp cadenza, and I have to sit and wait, which is not unusual for us with the harp. I find that if I do some deep breathing, that always helps me. And I just consciously inhale slowly, exhale slowly, and that always, just kind of calms whatever jitters I might be feeling.
What do you love most about training harp students at the college level?
I think what I love the most is that when I share with them my experience and my knowledge of the music that we're working on, and I observe how the things I suggest to them or tell them, how those things help them, that's very gratifying, because then I know that I've shared with them everything I can about what may be helpful for them going forward and help them in their performances. And when I can see that as I'm teaching them, that's very gratifying.
How is the transition as principal harpist of the Houston Symphony to associate professor of harp like?
Well, it was a transition. That's true. Except that it wasn't a complete transition. It was more like a slowing down. I retired from the orchestra, but since I have been associate professor at Rice, as I said, since 1986, that was always there. And I also had the University of Houston, and then I had the orchestra. And so when I retired from the orchestra, I just kind of eased up on my schedule a little bit, which was a change, but there wasn't a true transition into the teaching. The teaching just kept on as it had before, in terms of the number of students I have and in terms of what's expected from them at Rice and that kind of thing.
What are some takeaways from teaching so many different harpists over the years?
The most important thing is that consistently, I feel that young people are terrific. This has been a lot of years, since 1986. And of course, I was teaching before that as well. I taught at Carnegie Mellon University. I taught at the University of Oklahoma. So I've been teaching a long time. And what I find is that circumstances change, lifestyle changes, but fundamentally, young people are smart, they're thoughtful, they're caring, they're dedicated. And when I hear people say, oh, I don't know what this world is coming to, or I don't know about this younger generation, I don't find that to be true. I feel, as I said, circumstances may change. The way life events affect people may change, but fundamentally, I find young people to be very optimistic, and they give me a lot of faith in the future and, in humanity.
Having been with the Houston Symphony for so long, what is a fond memory you've had while there?
I have many wonderful memories of my years in the Houston Symphony. Some of them, funny, social, backstage friendly type memories of things that happened or events that happened when the orchestra would go on tour. And many of us would go out and tour cities and go to museums and have wonderful dinners. There are those kinds of memories. But the musical ones are really special. And the best ones of those are those magical concerts where everything just clicks, where you have a great conductor, you're playing in a wonderful hall, where you have a responsive audience, and where it all just happens at the same time. So there are three concerts that I always think of when I look back at my career. One was a concert where the orchestra played in Dallas in their hall, and we played the Bartok concert. No. We played Mahler First Symphony there. And it was, as I said, it was just one of those moments. We were in a magical place, and we had our music director on the podium, and the orchestra just rose up and played beautifully. Another one was when we played the Mahler Fifth Symphony in Vienna when we were on tour at the Musikverein. That also was a fabulous concert. And then I think the concert we played, this was right before I retired, we played the piece Wozzeck by Berg. And it was, again, conducted by our music director, who at that time was Hans Graf. The conductor for those other concerts was Christoph Eschenbach. But this concert with Graf was really great. The piece is very difficult and challenging, and none of us had ever played it before. But he was totally prepared. The orchestra really, really rose up, and we won a Grammy for that recording. And so that always sticks in my mind as something really special.
Lastly, what advice would you offer to younger harpists wanting to become principal harpists in the future?
My advice would be, first of all, work hard. Perform as much as you can, because you always learn something when you perform. Even when something doesn't go well, you learn something from that. And so performing as much as you have an opportunity to do is always a positive thing. And then listen to all kinds of music, and to master players of other instruments than the harp. Don't just listen to harp music or master players of the harp. Listen to other instruments too, because you learn so much about music that way. And then I think no matter how bad you think your voice is, I encourage my students to try to sing the way they want the music to come out. And it's not about whether you have a beautiful voice or not. It's about expressing the way the music touches you by singing it. And that's a valuable tool to work on, on mastering. Because I find that my students usually surprise me when I have them do that. They can sing something much differently than they've just played it. And that's a nice thing for us to touch on.